seasonality of Bitcoin, the end of August into September, not a good time for Bitcoin. September is actually the only month of the year that historically is negative.
Bitcoin's recent dip to around $1,110,000 reflects seasonal weakness and broader market uncertainty. Historically, September is the only month with consistent negative performance, often tied to low activity as investors step back during late summer. Added to this, traditional markets face speculation around interest rate cuts, with Jerome Powell signaling a possible September cut. This pullback may actually be healthy, resetting leverage before renewed institutional inflows push Bitcoin higher in the ongoing bull cycle.
Than buyers, easy explanation, obviously. But look, I think that there are two different aspects that are at play here. The first is any time that you look at the historical seasonality of Bitcoin, the end of August into September, not a good time for Bitcoin. September is actually the only month of the year that historically is negative. All of the other months, sometimes they're big months up, sometimes they're small months up, but September is the only month that historically is down. So it's somewhat to be expected. The seasonality is here. Now, also, why does it start in August and go into September? Well, what happens in August? The running joke. Everyone is on vacation. They're all somewhere else. They're not in front of their screens. You see this in the stock market, you see this in Bitcoin, et cetera. So I think that's one piece of it, is definitely that. The second thing is that as you look at the legacy or the traditional finance world, there's a lot of uncertainty still. There's a lot of speculation that's going on. Some people are trying to figure out what's going to happen with interest rates. Now we got a little bit more clarity, given that Jerome Powell has come out and said that he's going to likely cut rates in September. But I still think that there's a lot of folks who are saying, what are we going to do with our tactical allocation? If we have uncertainty, maybe we're not going to put as much money into the market as we previously thought we were. So what's interesting is Bitcoin is going down at the same time. The S&P has been going down over the last week or so, right? This is a thing that is a broad market pull down or a kind of resetting. Now, the reason why I think that's important, maybe the biggest takeaway from this, is what you don't want to have is you don't want to have Bitcoin's price go from $69,000 in November. It was $69,000, I think, on November 1st of last year, all the way up to, let's say, $150,000, which I pretty much have been saying I could see that happening in this bull market. If you just get a straight line there, then what ends up happening is you're probably going to get a very big dump on the other side, right? The bear market's going to be pretty brutal. So instead, what you want is you basically want these advancements in price. You want some sort of correction and resetting, right? You want to wipe out some of the open interest and some of the leverage in the system, kind of reset at a lower price, and then move up after that. So I think that's what's happening right now. I don't know where we'll kind of end up. Is 110,000, the bottom, 108, 105, 112, like somewhere in this general range. I think that we are going to reset, and then that gives us the ability to move back up. And so you can almost think of like setting a foundation of the price. All of the conditions become much more attractive and we go up. What I don't think people should expect is some like magical fast recovery. Remember, September on a seasonality basis is usually down. So I'm not saying it's going to be down this year, but I am saying that you should have tempered expectations going into this. And then the other piece is there's a lot of buying coming. Like, you ever heard of, people being like, what was it? The British are coming. Remember Paul Revere, right? He was running from house to house on his horse saying, the British are coming, the British are coming. The Bitcoin treasuries are coming. The Bitcoin treasuries are coming. Tell your friends. All of them are about to get access to their capital, and they're going to start buying in the market. And so it's billions of dollars collectively that should be buying Bitcoin. Now, there is not as simple of an analysis because some of those dollars are hedged. So when they put on the Bitcoin exposure, their investors are then putting on a short Bitcoin spot exposure. And so they can be kind of negated dollars. But I do think that as that capital starts to flow into the market, you're going to see a lot of people get very excited because there's going to be continuous announcements of people buying Bitcoin, right? Which kind of gets people excited. It's hitting the news. It's driving some FOMO to it. But the second thing is that if there's more buyers than sellers, the price should start going back up again. And so I think that this range that we're kind of in, call it 125 to maybe 110, will kind of hang out here for a while. But as we see these buyers come into the market, as we see the interest rate cut in September, like all of these components are going to feed into Bitcoin. I do not believe has topped in any way for this market cycle.
Jerome Powell finally bent the knee under mounting pressure, cutting rates while blaming job market weakness. But in reality, companies aren't collapsing. They're thriving through AI and automation, which boost productivity without showing up in job data. Firms like Meta and Palantir are reporting record profits with fewer employees, proving economic strength. Powell frames cuts as labor protection, but markets see through it. Rates are simply too high, and clearer communication is overdue.
When we were little kids, and I was 8 years older than you, so I obviously had a physical advantage, and I would come in your room, and we would start to tussle, right? And at some point, you'd be like, "Okay, enough of this," and you would yell for mom or dad, and be like, he's bothering me."
100%.
Right? Yeah, okay. That's what Jerome Powell did on Friday. He waved the white flag. He bent the knee. The public pressure became too much. He just can't deal with it anymore. They just kept going at him and going at him and going at him. He finally, all right, I'll cut rates in September. Now he's going to claim, which he did, that he's cutting rates because of the labor market. Oh, I'm worried about job loss, blah, 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 whatever. What that tells me is people aren't losing jobs. Companies are making more money. So the companies are becoming more efficient. So what he's doing is he's bailing out the humans, the human labor market, he's bailing out with the rate cut, and that's what he's going to blame. That's the scapegoat. But he's saying inflation, maybe it runs a little hotter, but I got to worry more about the labor market than the inflation. What I think is they are miscalculating job growth in America significantly. Give you a good example. In our company, just pick any one of them. We have not hired 2 times the number of employees in the last year that are human. We've hired more than 2 times the number of people, digital employees, AI agents, automation, all this stuff. So what normally would have been humans doing something, we are now using technology. Well, for every agent that's been hired in the American economy, the company isn't paying for them from an expense standpoint, but they're getting the worker productivity of the AI agent. That doesn't show up in the job numbers. So is the American workforce actually bigger? Could it be 50% bigger, 2 times bigger than it was a year ago, if you include the digital workers and the human workers? But again, his job isn't to worry about that. His job is to worry about the humans. So it comes to this idea of like what he sees as weakness actually is probably signaling strength in the economy, that the company's earnings are going up. Facebook, Meta, I can't remember the exact number, but I want to say that they are growing their net income like 20 or 30% year over year. It's a $2 trillion company growing 20 or 30% year over year. Profits.
That's ridiculous.
That's crazy. Palantir said that they are going to 10x their revenue and do it with like 400 or 800 less employees. 10 to 20% of their workforce they're going to get rid of, and they're going to make 10 times more revenue. Does that sound like weakness to you? It sounds like the companies are becoming more resilient, more productive, more efficient, which means they should be more valuable. But his job is to look at job data. So he's not looking at it holistically. He's just looking at the job data. He says, oh, that looks like a little weakness there. Let's cut rates. Now, I like the end result of cutting rates. I think it's complete nonsense that he's blaming the job market for cutting the rates. And I think instead he should just come out and say, hey, rates are too high. I've been late. We should cut. We're going to go ahead and do that. My apologies.
The market clearly thinks that he's going to cut, and
he said he's going to cut.
Yeah.
In uncertain, in as about as certain terms as you could expect.
Yeah.
Right. That's the other thing is these guys, like, just use English, man. Stop with all the nonsense of the like, we're going to be tethered to reality on inflation, or we will reevaluate our policy. And then there's some guy who's like, he's got a red tie on. He spoke for 32 seconds. That means rate cuts coming in September, 25 basis points. Like, dude, what are you, a translator? Right.
But you have to leave it up for some uncertainty. Like, you can't say we're 100% going to cut rates in September.
You don't have to say 100%. You can say, based on the facts that we have right now, we are likely to cut interest rates in September by 25 basis points. If the facts change, we reserve the right to change our opinion. Done. I saved them a 27-minute speech. Just say the freaking 2 sentences, get off the stage, right? But that's not the game. The game is all stuff. So it comes back to this idea. If you are going to give guidance of the future of what you're going to do, speak in plain English. Just say it so anyone can understand. Because I would argue, here's a good one. Federal Reserve is discriminating. They're discriminating by only sharing their forward guidance of policy with people who have the sophistication and education to decipher the Fed language. You're putting the people in the American economy who don't understand all your big fancy words at a significant disadvantage. Why don't you just use simple language so more people understand what you're going to do? Why is it that you are trying to only tell a certain group of people what you're going to do, but not everyone? Aren't you discriminating against everyone? That's an interesting idea.
You could stretch that pretty far, though. You got to be careful with that line of thinking.
Well, again, the onus is on them. Why are you giving some information to only some part of the market and not to everyone?
That's fair.
Right? So the question becomes, should they be given the guidance at all? Huge debate. But it comes back to this idea of he bent the knee. I'm in your room, you're yelling, Mom. He finally said enough. Now, he got another big legal fight on his hands. And